In the shadow of the western desert, near the town of Mut in the Dakhla oasis, two brothers undertake a simple task. Dig a well to reach the groundwater that might sustain a small farm their family inherited. What begins as manual labor, pickaxes striking stone, dust rising in the heat, becomes something far more extraordinary when their tools strike something that refuses to break. Beneath the sand lies a carved stone, perfectly preserved, bearing the image of a deity no scholar has ever documented. The inscriptions surrounding it are ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, yet they depict a god absent from every known papyrus scroll, every temple record, every tomb painting catalogued in centuries of Egyptology. As word spreads through the village, the brothers realize they have uncovered not just stone, but a mystery that challenges everything historians believe about Egypt's pantheon. Someone else has already noticed. Someone who wants to keep this discovery buried. Literally. Chapter 1. The Strike. The morning sun had not yet climbed high enough to burn when Khalil and Rashid began digging. Their inherited plot sat 3 kilometers south of Mut, a rectangle of dust and scrub that their grandfather had purchased decades ago with the promise of water beneath it. That promise had been kept by geology alone. Their family had never bothered to dig deep enough to find it. Khalil was the practical one, lean, methodical, measuring the depth with a knotted rope every 2 hours. Rashid was the dreamer, already imagining date palms and vegetable rows, calculating what they might sell at the market in Cairo. Both men were in their 30s now, old enough to know that inheritance often came with obligation rather than opportunity. The pickaxe fell in rhythm, striking the compacted earth. Strike, scrape, lift. Strike, scrape, lift. By midday, they had excavated nearly 4 meters down. The walls of their shaft showed the geological layers of the oasis, sand, then clay, then deeper sand again. The work was brutal and monotonous. Then Khalil's pickaxe struck something that did not yield. The sound was different, a resonant clang rather than the dull thud of packed earth. Both brothers stopped. Khalil knelt, brushing away the dust, and exposed a smooth surface of stone. Not the jagged rock that sometimes interrupted oasis wells, but something deliberate, something carved. Rashid, look at this. His brother descended the narrow ladder they had lashed together with rope. In the dimness of the shaft, with only the midday sun cutting down from above, they could make out the faint outline of carved lines. Khalil ran his fingers across the surface, feeling the precision of ancient toolwork. There's a shape, Rashid whispered, like a figure. They worked carefully now, using smaller tools to clear away the surrounding soil. The stone was limestone, yellowed with age. And as the dust fell away, the figure became clear. A human form, standing in formal pose, wearing a headdress unlike any modern Egyptian monument. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, the proportions perfect, the details precise enough that Khalil could see the folds in the linen garment carved into the stone. But it was what surrounded the figure that made both brothers stop working entirely. Hieroglyphics. Rows of them, surrounding the figure in a careful grid, ancient Egyptian writing undoubtedly, but the symbols seemed to pulse with deliberate meaning. Khalil had seen hieroglyphics before, carved on tourist-defaced tombs, printed in books. But these felt different, urgent somehow, as if they had been waiting 3,000 years to be read. We need to show someone, Rashid said finally. We need to see what's beneath it first, Khalil replied. They worked until sunset, carefully exposing more of the stone. It was a block, roughly 1 meter square, set deliberately at this depth. Below it, there appeared to be nothing but more stone. But between the layers, in the thin crack where the block met the earth beneath, something glinted. Gold. Rashid reached for it, but Khalil caught his wrist. Not yet. Not tonight. Someone should see this first, someone who understands what it means. In the darkness, neither brother noticed the figure standing at the rim of the well shaft, observing them. The figure watched for only a moment before stepping back into the shadow of the date palms and vanishing into the night. Chapter 2. The Scholar and the Offer. By morning, Word had reached Dr. Nuri Hassad, an archaeologist in Mut who consulted occasionally for the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities. Rashid had walked into town at first light and mentioned the discovery to a merchant who knew Hassad's work. Within 3 hours, the scholar stood at the edge of the well shaft, peering down at the stone with intensity that made the brothers uncomfortable. Hassad was in his 60s, gray-bearded, with the practiced skepticism of someone who had spent his career separating genuine archaeological significance from the delusions of well-meaning amateurs. But when he descended the ladder and saw the carving, his entire body stiffened. "Extraordinary," he breathed. "Absolutely extraordinary. This is 18th dynasty, possibly earlier. The style of the headdress. I have never seen anything like it." "Can you read the hieroglyphics?" Khalil asked. Hassad moved closer, tracing the carved lines with his fingertips. His expression shifted, confusion first, then something that looked like concern. "Some of them, yes, but this one." He pointed to the central glyph. "This symbol does not appear in any standard list I have memorized. It should not exist." A voice came from the edge of the well. "And yet it does." All 3 men looked up. A woman in her 40s stood at the rim, dressed in professional hiking clothes, her camera hanging from her neck. Behind her stood 2 local men with boxes and equipment. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez," the woman called down. "I represent a private collector in Europe who would be very interested in acquiring whatever you find here. I can offer you 60,000 euros for the intact stone, and another 40,000 for whatever else is below it. Tonight." Khalil and Rashid exchanged a look. Hassad's face had gone pale. "You cannot do that," Hassad said quietly. "This is Egyptian heritage. It must go to the ministry, to the museum in Cairo." "The ministry moves slowly," Vasquez replied. "The museum has budgets. My collector moves quickly and pays in full." She smiled. "Unless you prefer to spend the next 6 months arguing with bureaucrats. I will return at sunset with a truck. The choice is yours." She turned and walked back toward her vehicle, her assistants following. In the silence of the well, the brothers understood that their simple inheritance had transformed into something far more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. Chapter 3. The translation. Hassad refused to leave the well. He set up a small camp nearby with a tent and a camp stove, determined that the stone would not be disturbed until the ministry could properly document it. But documentation required translation, and translation required understanding the impossible. "This symbol," Hassad said, sitting by firelight that evening, his notebook filled with sketches of the hieroglyphics, "refers to something called Sethun. I believe it is a name, a deity's name, but it does not match any known god in the Egyptian pantheon. Not Ra, not Osiris, not Thoth, not Ptah. None of them." "Could it be a misspelling?" Rashid suggested. "Something corrupt or misremembered?" "No. Look at the precision of the carving. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were writing." Hassad flipped through his photographs of various papyri. "I have spent 40 years studying Egyptian religion. I have catalogued hundreds of deities, minor gods, local spirits, even gods who were worshipped for only a single generation. But this one, it is as if someone deliberately tried to create a god no one would ever recognize." Khalil leaned forward. "Or as if someone deliberately tried to bury the memory of one." The implication hung in the firelit darkness. Hassad looked at the young man with sudden respect. "Yes," the scholar said slowly. That is exactly what this might be." A sound interrupted them, the distant rumble of an engine growing closer. Vasquez's truck, perhaps, or someone else entirely. In the darkness beyond their fire, the desert seemed to pulse with hidden presence. The brothers and the scholar exchanged glances, and without speaking, they moved toward the well shaft, where the carved stone waited beneath meters of earth, keeping its secrets. If you're enjoying this adventure so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 4. The Rivals. By morning, they were not alone. A second camp had appeared a kilometer away. 3 men, professional equipment, a vehicle bearing the insignia of a private excavation firm based in Cairo. They had not approached, not yet, but their presence was unmistakable. Someone else knew about the stone, someone with resources and intent. They will try to excavate it themselves, Hassad said grimly. Perhaps dig their own shaft, approach from a different angle. If multiple parties are fighting for control, the stone itself could be damaged in the process. Khalil made a decision. Then we move faster. You said the block might hide something beneath it. We dig through the night, we get to whatever is below before anyone else does. That is reckless, Hassad warned. We have no idea what the structural integrity. The structural integrity is the least of our worries now, Rashid interrupted. He was looking toward the rival camp, where 2 of the men had begun unpacking drilling equipment. They worked through the night with lanterns and care, Khalil and Rashid doing the physical labor while Hassad documented every detail. The block itself proved immovable. It was too heavy to lift, too deep to shift. But they discovered its edges, traced its full dimensions, and found that beneath it, in that tantalizing crack, lay not gold but something far more valuable. A corridor, a narrow passageway carved into the limestone, descending deeper into the earth than any well had business going. And at the entrance, carved in letters so precise they seemed to glow in the lamplight, were more hieroglyphics. These ones Hassad translated immediately. Here lies the name of one who must not be remembered. Here rests the truth that kings denied. Chapter 5. The Collapse. The passageway was narrow, barely enough room for a man to squeeze through sideways, and it descended at a steep angle, as if burrowed down into the earth's core. Khalil went first, pulling himself through by his hands while Rashid kept the light trained behind him. 50 meters in, the passage opened into a chamber. The chamber was small, no more than 3 meters across, its walls carved with hieroglyphic text that covered every surface. And in the center, protected by nothing but age and deliberate obscurity, lay artifacts. Statues of a deity, crude, almost rough compared to the smooth carving at the well's surface, as if the god had been hastily made and hastily hidden. Bronze implements and documents, papyrus scrolls, miraculously preserved in the dry air, covered with the same impossible hieroglyphics. This was a purge, Hassad whispered from the entrance, unable to fit into the chamber itself. A deliberate erasure. Someone made a decision to remove a god from history. And they hid all evidence of that god in this tomb. Khalil was photographing the documents with his phone when the first tremor moved through the stone. It was slight, barely noticeable, but it was enough to make Rashid look up from the papyri he was examining. The second tremor was stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. The drilling, Rashid said. The other team. They've hit something. The drilling had indeed hit something, a load-bearing wall that formed part of the chamber's support structure. As the ancient stone weakened, the entire network of passages began to strain. The tremors came faster, more violent. Chunks of limestone fell. "Get out," Hassad shouted from above. "Get out now." Khalil grabbed as many documents as he could carry and dove toward the exit. Rashid was behind him, moving faster. The ceiling was collapsing in sections now, tons of stone falling in cascades. They crawled through the passage, stones scraping their backs, dust choking their lungs. Behind them, the chamber sealed itself, crushing the statues and artifacts still inside beneath tons of limestone. They burst out of the well shaft into chaos. The rival team's drilling had opened a fissure in the earth directly above the passage. Their equipment had tumbled in. Their men were scrambling to secure their vehicle. And from the village, in the distance, emergency vehicles were beginning to move toward the site. Khalil held up the Papyrus, still intact. Rashid clutched several artifacts. And Hassad, emerging from the confusion, saw what they had saved. The truth, the scholar said. They saved the truth. Chapter 6. The Forgotten God. 3 months later, the findings were presented to the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities in a private session. The stone had been carefully excavated and removed. The papyri had been photographed, documented, and preserved. The artifacts, crude though they were, had been analyzed and dated, and the scholars working from the deciphered hieroglyphics had reconstructed the story. Sethan had been a god worshipped for approximately 150 years during the 18th dynasty. The god represented rebellion against established order, resistance against authority, and the power of those who refused to be ruled. Temples had been built, priests had served, followers had been numerous. Then, during the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut, an order came down. Sethan was to be forgotten. Every temple was destroyed, every monument was smashed, every written reference was erased, and this single chamber, hidden beneath the earth, was created as a time capsule, not to preserve the god, but to hide the evidence that the god had ever existed, so that future generations would never know what ancient Egypt had tried so desperately to forget. The irony was perfect. By trying to erase Sethan completely, the pharaohs had actually created the conditions for the god's rediscovery. The very act of hiding preserved what the act of destruction could not achieve. Khalil and Rashid stood in the museum, looking at the stone displayed behind protective glass. The carved figure of Sethun stood eternal, headdress unique and strange, the hieroglyphics surrounding it finally telling their story to a world that had forgotten them 3,000 years ago. "Your well would have been beautiful," Hassad said to them, standing at their side. "It would have watered crops and sustained your farm." "Instead, we watered history," Rashid replied. The brothers did not keep the money Vasquez had offered. They did not need it. The ministry had rewarded them generously, and more importantly, they had something that money could not provide: the knowledge that they had restored a name to the world. Sethan had been forgotten, deliberately, thoroughly erased by those who feared what the god represented. But forgetting is temporary. Every true story, if hidden long enough, eventually emerges. The well remains unfinished, a shaft that descends into darkness, leading nowhere now. But if you dig in that spot today, you will find the stone, and you will see the face of a god that history tried to kill, and you will understand that some things, no matter how deeply buried, refuse to stay forgotten. If this treasure hunt already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more forgotten stories to light. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of discovery and hidden history. See you in the next adventure.